喺2014年7月6日2012榮耀盼望主日信息感言部分，日華牧師分享到，著名研究太陽系第10行星 Planet X 嘅專家 Marshall Masters 喺近日所發佈嘅4段短片裏面，提到佢同 The ZionDaily Skyview Team 團隊從唔同嘅途徑拍攝到 Planet X， 故此已經確認尋找到 Planet X， 並確認咗佢嘅位置同軌跡。佢亦宣稱，確認 Planet X 並唔係單單一顆環繞太陽運行嘅行星，而係一個似太陽系嘅小型星系所組成。Marshall Masters 同 The ZionDaily Skyview Team 從拍攝到嘅 Planet X 小型星系照片中得出結論 ，Planet X 由多顆星體所組成，中間係一顆黑太陽，亦即天文學家所稱嘅棕矮星 （Brown Dwarf）。呢一個黑太陽就係古文明同一啲天文學家，例如著名嘅 Carl Sagan 所稱嘅 Nemesis。
A courageous group of very talented amateur astronomers who call themselves the ZionDaily Skyview Team have been tracking Nemesis and its orbitals for a few years now. And it's really sad to see how much they get attacked and from so many different angles. As the old saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. On October 21, 2013, the ZionDaily Skyview team posted a YouTube video titled Now Seen in the Western Sky. In this video, they challenged amateur astronomers to make their own observations of Nemesis. All that was needed for the observation was a basic telescope costing a few $100, and they made the instructions very simple for the benefit of newbies. They did this by using easily recognizable references to Neptune and Arcturus. They also showed us how the object is moving through the sky and where they had last observed it. What you see here is what they observed, and they provided this image so newbies could recognize what they were looking at. And here's an enhanced close-up. Admittedly, it is not a delightful viewing experience like the rings of Saturn or finding the moons of Jupiter. Rather, an observation like this has an ominous feel to it, as it should, because it is a brown dwarf star, a sister companion to our own Sol. So let's take a close look at it. Nemesis is a brown dwarf star. It was only in the 1960s that they were first theorized to exist, and at that time they were called black dwarfs. Unlike our Sol, a brown dwarf lacks the mass to sustain a nuclear furnace, so they are by nature very dim and difficult for astronomers to observe. Also, they can be surrounded by a dust disk, as shown in this artist's illustration, which makes them even more difficult to observe. Because Nemesis has a dust disk. Let's take another look at it. If we were to imagine that we are floating in space with Nemesis before us, it would probably look somewhat like this. It would be dark and surrounded by an ever-shifting dust disk that would only make it even more difficult to observe. It is why Chilean astronomer Carlos Ferrada, the man to theorize about the existence of Nemesis, called it the black star. He called it black for a good reason. The part of the light spectrum that is visible to the human eye is a narrow band between the 400 to 700 nanometers range. This is why the Planet X system will need to be much closer to our sun before it is visible everywhere on the planet.
呢個黑太陽同我哋每日所見嘅太陽係夥伴行星。我哋嘅太陽同呢個黑太陽係一個雙星系統，會喺一個指定軌跡入邊互相環繞而行。當每一次我哋嘅太陽同呢個黑太陽相遇，亦即係雙方最接近嘅時間，就會因為引力、磁場嘅影響同埋所帶嚟嘅隕石，為地球帶嚟毀滅性嘅大災難。歷史上邊，聖經同埋上百個唔同嘅民族都曾經記載，地球唔止一次出現大災難。例如挪亞大洪水、摩西時代嘅埃及十災、傳說中嘅亞特蘭蒂斯沉沒、中國女媧煉石補天嘅時代，其實都係因為呢個稱為 Nemesis 嘅黑太陽，同埋環繞呢個黑太陽運行嘅 Planet X， 每幾千年接近地球一次所引發。Planet X 被古蘇美人稱為 Nibiru。喺古蘇美嘅文獻入邊，當每一次 Nibiru 出現喺地球上空，甚至被全地嘅人睇見嘅時候，就係大災難出現之時。喺以下嘅影片入邊 ，Marshall Masters 指出，早喺2008年2月，一位匿名人士 Nibiru Vol.230 喺 YouTube 上載咗一段，聲稱係喺2008年1月喺南極洲嘅紅外線天文望遠鏡所拍攝到嘅照片。正因為黑太陽係一顆只發出紅外線嘅綜藝星，只有用強力嘅紅外線望遠鏡先至可以拍攝得到。照片顯示出一個紅色嘅暗星，帶住其他環繞佢運行嘅星體，其中一顆就係 Nibiru， 即係 Planet X， 正喺南極方向逼近地球。The 00 Skyview Team 喺4年多後嘅2012年10月10日，亦用一支極高級嘅民用天文望遠鏡拍攝同南極天文台所拍攝到極為相似嘅 Planet X 系統照片。
This pole shift trajectory forecast begins with an anonymous hero, a government whistleblower only known to us as Nibiru Shock 2012, who first revealed images acquired from the South Pole Telescope in January 2008 of the Planet X system. In these enhanced images he presented, he shows us a brown dwarf mini-constellation with its own planets and moons. And what is interesting is that this brown dwarf has a tail, which tells us is going to be an awfully dirty thing. Then on October 10, 2012, the 00 Skyview team released their video, A Dark Binary Star, and the object they were viewing with a highly advanced amateur telescope bears a striking resemblance to the one captured with the SPT in January 2008, and there are others.
另外，喺2013年5月27日，曾有人喺由中美飛往南美嘅飛機上面，從高空中拍攝到喺太陽旁邊有一顆不知名但係極為巨大同埋光亮嘅星體。Marshall Masters 而家認為呢一個其實就係黑太陽 Nemesis。
On July 28, 2013, we published our video, Planet X System Observations and Orbital Analysis, with our own observation of Nemesis made by Jorge Arena during a business trip to Lima, Peru. On the last leg of his journey from El Salvador to Peru, he captured this rare image of Nemesis through the clouds at the sun's 7 o'clock position.
此外，根據美國太空總署監測太陽嘅人造衛星蘇豪喺2014年1月10日拍攝到而家位於太陽下方嘅位置，有顆比太陽體積只係細小約一半嘅巨大暗星。呢個暗星同埋飛機上拍攝到嘅係相同嘅星體，而位置亦都係相同，所以呢一顆星應該就係黑太陽 Nemesis。
Then on January 10, 2014, YouTuber Stargazer Nation posted a feed capture from the Soho Lasco C3 camera. In it, we clearly see Nemesis, or the Black Star as Carlos Ferrata called it, again near the sun's 7 o'clock position. Frankly, we were amazed to see that he got this imagery, as we routinely see these kinds of images scrubbed off the Soho site nearly as fast as they go up. But like they say, the early bird gets the worm, and so our hats are off to Stargazer Nation for a brilliant piece of citizen journalism. He nailed it.
Marshall Masters 對此作出結論，正係接近地球同埋太陽系平面嘅唔係一顆星體，而係一個稱為 Planet X 系統嘅星群，而中間嘅一顆星就係黑太陽，而當中環繞黑太陽最外嘅星體就係人們常稱嘅 Planet X。而喺未來嘅短時間之內，全人類將會肉眼睇到 Planet X 同埋黑太陽。佢亦估計地球將會喺 Planet X 同埋太陽中間經過，並有一段時間成一直線。
The Nemesis brown dwarf star is the smaller companion to our own Sol, and like Sol, Nemesis has its own planets as well. Of particular interest to us is its outermost planet, Nibiru. We first reported our observations of Nibiru on February 11, 2013, with our video, Object of Interest as Seen from the Turrialba Volcano. Our observation efforts began in mid-December 2012 with an email from an expatriate who lives at the base of the volcano. We subsequently began observing this object on January 5, 2013, which I initially named Bluebonnet. We tracked it from a surveillance camera at the top of a Costa Rican volcano located 10 degrees north with a clear view to the southwest, called Turrialba. We tracked it a few hours before sunset each day for months and amassed hundreds of image captures from 2 different surveillance camera systems. Early on, we suspected it was Nibiru, and on July 12, 2013, the 00 Skyview team posted a video titled A Cyclical Storm Brews, confirming our suspicions. Their finding was that we in fact were observing Nibiru, the outermost orbital of Nemesis, in the constellation Ophiuchus. That being said, the linchpin for this pole shift trajectory forecast is not Nibiru. Rather, it can only be one object, Nemesis. For this reason, we'll use the January 10, 2014 Stargazer Nation capture of Nemesis from the SOHO LASCO C3 camera as that linchpin. And so here is our pole shift trajectory forecast, starting with the SOHO observation in January of this year. Here we see Nemesis and Nibiru in conjunction with Earth on the opposite side of the Sun, with Nemesis just below the ecliptic and Nibiru just above. Keep in mind, Earth is already seeing evidence of increased solar radiance, resulting in a corresponding increase in seismicity and volcanism. Also keep in mind a 2008 Project Camelot interview with government whistleblower Bob Dean about the coming of Nibiru. In that interview, Dean was quite explicit in his statement that the flyby would occur while Earth and Nibiru are on the same side of the Sun. And so our pole shift alignment forecast is for some time after 2016. We are also very certain that sometime in 2016, both Nibiru and Nemesis will be naked eye visible from everywhere on Earth. This will likely be about the time Nemesis reaches its point of perihelion with Sol, in other words, its closest distance to our Sun. The pole shift event will occur when Nemesis crosses the ecliptic on its outward leg to the furthest reaches of our solar system. At this point, both Nemesis and Nibiru will be in opposition to Earth, and that is when their combined tidal forces will gain a purchase on the lithosphere of our planet, thereby causing a pole shift in which every major body of water will come out of its basin. During this time, we will see both Nemesis and Nibiru, and our planet will also be pelted by the Nemesis dust disk. Also, there will be catastrophic interactions between our Sun and both Nemesis and Nibiru, resulting in catastrophic solar storms, which will scorch the surface of our planet.
另外，喺2014年喺 Marshall Masters 一個電台節目中，訪問咗一位名為 Richard Bollerup 嘅人士。佢喺美國嘅北卡羅來納州嘅 Statesville 市，分別於2013年12月13日同2014年1月8日嘅日落時分，拍攝到一顆喺星圖中不曾被記載嘅藍色巨型星體。佢首先係肉眼睇見呢一顆星，再以手機將佢拍攝落嚟。Richard Bollerup 指出，係飛機噴灑 chemtrail 令人難以喺地面睇見呢一顆 Planet X。呢個正吻合又華牧師曾分享到，飛機噴灑 chemtrail 最主要嘅目的就係讓全人類都睇唔見 Planet X。而 Marshall Masters 指出，呢一顆星體就係環繞黑太陽嘅 Planet X。
In the meantime, when observed in the infrared spectrum, a brown dwarf like Nemesis will stand out like a sore thumb. Thanks to another courageous whistleblower known only to us as Nibiru Shock 2012, do we have infrared observations of both Nemesis and the entire Planet X system taken in January 2008 with the South Pole Telescope. Called the SPT, it is located at the Edmondson Scott South Pole Station in Antarctica. As you can see in this series of images, we're not looking at a single object, but rather a brown dwarf companion to our own sun with its own planets and moons, which is why we call this mini constellation the Planet X system. Also of note in 2008, another whistleblower known as DNIR 4808N1 leaked an observation of Nemesis made with the SPT in May of that year. When you put them side by side, it's clear that we have not one but two observations of the same object taken months apart. In other words, clear confirmation. I personally witnessed how both of these YouTube channels came under professional attack. This was a takedown, a suppression, pure, plain, and simple. But you know what? They're still the gift that keeps on giving. Ha ha ha. So with that, let's take a look at the object I initially dubbed Bluebonnet. And we've been observing that from the surveillance cameras at Turrialba, and it happens to be the outermost orbital of the Planet X system. This image from the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica was captured with the third camera system installed there, which in a word is simply pathetic. Nonetheless, if you look closely, you'll see our object of interest. I first dubbed it Bluebonnet, but it actually happens to be the planet Nibiru, which orbits Nemesis, the brown dwarf observed by the 00 Skyview team in October of last year. There's a lot of confusion about Nibiru out there because most people do not understand that Nibiru, also known as Planet X, Hercules, Red Planet, Destroyer, Frightener, and other names, is the outermost orbital of Nemesis. Therefore, Nemesis and Nibiru are part of what we refer to as the Planet X system, a mini constellation in orbit around our own sun, Sol. Now, okay, some of you might be saying, hey, next time I'm at an altitude of 13,000 feet on top of a volcano, tell me which way to look. In the meantime, can we see it here in the United States? Well, if you look up, you can. One man did. His name is Richard Bollerup, and he's from North Carolina. Richard is a professional contractor and spends most of his days outside. And he does something that 99.99% of everyone else in America fails to do every day. He looks up at the sky. You know, it's a funny thing to say, but the next time you walk through an airport departure lounge, take a moment to notice what I call the zombie shuffle. You'll see people looking at their slavetronics instead of looking at each other. As you do, notice how quiet the terminal can be. All you'll likely hear are the sounds of airport workers and the air conditioning system. Otherwise, everyone else is buried into their slavetronics and oblivious to the world around them. But not so for Richard Bollerup. He looks up, and now in his own words, he's going to share with us what he observed in the skies above Statesville, North Carolina.
This is Marshall, and I'm interviewing Richard Bollerup of Statesville, North Carolina. Richard, thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to show two images here, and the first one we're talking about you took on December 13th, 2013. Did you see this with your own two eyes?
Oh, most definitely.
Is that what prompted you to take the picture?
Oh, no doubt about it.
And you used a Samsung 13 megapixel smartphone?
Yes, Samsung Note 3, actually.
All right. At the moment you saw that blue object in the sky, what caught your attention? What made you look?
Well, the first thing, I was working on a roof, because I'm in construction, and I happened to, take a break. My back was hurting a little, and straighten myself out, and I looked up, and I noticed there was a secondary light in the sky besides our sun.
Mm-hmm.
And then that really attracted me because I've heard a lot about, Planet X, Wormwood, whatever you want to call it. And then I looked, and I seen that, and I started snapping photos.
I know you sent us several of those. And how long did it remain persistent in the sky to the naked eye?
Actually, it was on and off to the naked eye for at least, I would say, 30 minutes as the chemtrails were covering and uncovering these objects in the sky.
And we can see chemtrails in the picture. So was the spraying heavy that day?
Oh, yes. They were trying desperately to cover it, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, let me go forward in time to your second photo taken on January 8, 2014. What were you doing that day? Were you in the same area when you took that picture in Statesville, North Carolina?
No, I wasn't in the same area, but I was still in Statesville. But I went to Walmart to pick up a few things, and I'm always looking at the sky, especially after noticing those first pictures that I took.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed another glow in the sky next to our sun, to the right.
Right.
Around 3 o'clock to our sun. And I noticed another little blue dot in the sky, so I started taking pictures.
Another blue object. You saw this with your own eyes first, and then you took the picture using the Samsung smartphone, correct?
No doubt about it.
All right. How long did this blue object persist in the sky that you were able to observe it that day?
Well, I was snapping pictures that day for around 5 minutes, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Approximately. It could be give or take a minute. And once I got my pictures, I was just like happy with them, so I left. So I couldn't give you exact, how long it was in the sky. It wasn't for long because they were always hustling up to cover it up.
Obviously.
總結 The 000 Skyview Team 喺2013年10月21日所拍攝到黑太陽喺蛇夫座位置嘅照片，加上 Richard Bollerup 喺北卡羅來納州嘅 Statesville 市，分別於2013年12月13日同2014年1月8日所拍到嘅 Planet X 照片，再加上圖里艾爾瓦火山嘅監察錄像機所拍攝到 Planet X 喺2014年1月23日同2月12日嘅照片，已經可以確定黑太陽同 Planet X 嘅位置，以及佢哋喺天空中運行嘅軌跡，並證明佢哋都係喺天空附近嘅位置。
According to the 00 Skyview team, they observed this object on October 2013, which they show tracking from the constellation Aquila to the constellation Ophiuchus, where, interestingly enough, the Lost Book of Nostradamus tells us to look, assuming we're curious enough about where this beast is coming from. So with that, let's plot it on our Yowza.com observation star map. This way, you'll be able to see where all of these observations appear within the same exact piece of sky. Please note, we've made every effort to plot these observations as precisely as possible, but do please allow for a small margin of error. So, let's go. First off, here's the spot where the 00 Skyview team observed Nemesis on October 21, 2013. Then on December 13, 2013, Richard Bollerup of Statesville, North Carolina personally observed and captured this image of Nibiru. We checked Richard's observation against Stellarium to verify that it was not a cataloged object, such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. It was not a cataloged object, and it was in the proper field of view. This placed Richard's first Nibiru observation in or near the constellation of Ophiuchus. Given that Nibiru is the outermost orbital of the Planet X system, this gives you a good idea of how large this mini constellation is. Next up is our January 23, 2014 observation of Nibiru with the third camera system installed on the Turrialba volcano in Costa Rica. We checked this Turrialba observation with Stellarium to verify that it was not a cataloged object such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. It was not a cataloged object, and it was in the proper field of view. With this observation of Nibiru, we find it close to the center of the constellation Ophiuchus. Interestingly enough, Richard Bollerup's January 8, 2014 observation of Nibiru was made a few weeks earlier, and it put Nibiru very near the same spot where we found it with the January 23rd observation from Turrialba. We also checked Richard's second observation with Stellarium to verify that it was not a catalogued object such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. It was not a catalogued object, and it was in the proper field of view. It is interesting to see the close proximity of Nibiru in these two different observations in January of this year, one from Turrialba and the other from North Carolina. And our last observation in this dataset was of Nibiru on February 12, 2014 from Turrialba. We checked this second Turrialba observation with Stellarium to verify that it was not a catalogued object such as Venus, and that it was in the proper field of view. It was not a catalogued object, and it was in the proper field of view. With this observation placement, please keep in mind to allow for a small margin of error. Nonetheless, what we're seeing here is the suggestion of an elliptical orbit path. It is also important to note that the placements on this observation sky map do not take into account how these objects are moving through the sky over time and in relationship to each other. That being said, what we clearly have now are three different observations from three different credible sources. So with this in mind, let's tackle the 800-pound gorilla. In other words, Nibiru is nearing.
Marshall Masters 亦藉着由2010年至2014年嘅照片，發現到一顆正在移動嘅星體。照片係由位於中美洲火山上海拔13000尺高度嘅圖里亞爾瓦火山 Turrialba Volcano 嘅監察錄像機所拍攝到。而呢一顆星嘅位置、時間同移動方向，正好對應 Richard Bolerup 喺美國北卡羅來納州嘅 Statesville 市所拍攝到嘅巨大藍色星體嘅位置。雖然呢幾年嘅時間，圖里亞爾瓦火山嘅監察錄像機已經換咗2次唔同嘅機種同改變拍攝角度，但 Marshall Masters 將照片再重疊時，都發現照片中嘅神秘星體係同一顆星，即係 Planet X。由於噴灑 chemtrail 只能喺上萬尺嘅火山上同喺飛機上先至拍攝到黑太陽同 Planet X， 因此 Marshall Masters 同佢嘅團隊已經可以藉以上資料估計黑太陽 Nemesis 同 Nibiru Planet X 嘅位置，並預測佢哋將來嘅軌跡。
So with this in mind, we're going to do a head-on comparison of images for the months of January 2010, 2013, and 2014, each taken with a different camera system. And to level the playing field, we'll compensate the third camera's bizarre tilt and zoom so that there will be a consistent relationship between all three camera systems. Now, in order to adjust for tilt and zoom, we need to start with the camera 3 image, since that is the one that is intentionally configured to be misleading. This compensation begins by defining a common reference for all three cameras. That's simple. We've always used this small peak in the middle of the saddle at the mouth of the volcano, and so we'll use it here to compensate for all three camera system images. For camera 1, we're using an image acquired on January 2010. For camera 2, we're using an image acquired on January 2013. And for camera 3, we're going to use an image acquired on January 23, 2014. We'll start by using this January 23, 2014 image from camera 3, and here is the small peak in the saddle which will serve as our reference. This is what we'll use to adjust the images from cameras 1 and 2, so they are consistent for tilt and zoom with camera 3. Here we see the January 2010 image from camera 1 adjusted for the field of view for camera 3. And here we see the January 2013 image from camera 2 adjusted for the field of view for camera 3. So now that everything is on a level footing, we're ready to take a look at close-up images of Nibiru as it was imaged in 2010, 2013, and 2014 to see if there is any difference in size. Here we see our first image from the first camera in January 2010. Next is a close-up of Nibiru from camera 2 in January 2013. And now for the big bada bing. Here we see our third image from camera 3 taken in January of this year. All three close-ups are fully adjusted for zoom and tilt. Therefore, the evidence clearly shows that Nibiru has increased in size, despite the machinations of our government and the low-resolution camera it installed at Turrialba with a bizarre tilt and zoom.
Marshall Masters 估計黑太陽仍正喺太陽系平面下方嘅位置，並由下而上向太陽系平面上方進發。由於 Plan X 係環繞黑太陽運行，按所拍攝到嘅照片所估計 ，Plan X 環繞黑太陽嘅軌跡係同太陽系成垂直交叉嘅方向，而現今 Plan X 係喺太陽系平面嘅上方。喺地球上嘅人睇嚟，係喺日落時太陽嘅右邊。Marshall Masters 對此作出結論：未來嘅短時間之內，全人類將會肉眼睇到 Plan X 同埋黑太陽。佢估計地球將會喺 Plan X 同埋太陽中間經過，並有一段時間成一直線。然而，日華牧師曾經喺2009年12月嘅2012榮耀盼望信息籌備營中早已分享到，呢個將會係最壞嘅情況。由於 Plan X 係一個帶有大量從宇宙中所吸收嘅電荷，所以當地球喺 Plan X 同埋太陽中間經過嘅話，就會使太陽同埋 Plan X 經過地球而互相放電。到時每日24小時，全地球人類都會睇見 Webbot 所曾預測嘅宇宙雷同埋宇宙電嘅邊痕打地球嘅地面，而地球面向太陽方向嘅位置，亦會經歷如同遙視者 Adams 所預見，將會有 X 級嘅 Q-Shot 級數太陽風打中地球，令全地面向太陽方向位置嘅一切都被火燒啦，如同聖經啟示錄所預言嘅大災難。
啟示錄8章5至12節，天使拿着香爐，盛滿了壇上的火，倒在地上，隨有雷轟、大聲、閃電、地震。拿着7支號的7位天使就預備要吹。第一位天使吹號，就有雹子與火摻着血丟在地上，地的1/3和樹的1/3被燒了，一切的青草也被燒了。第二位天使吹號，就有仿佛火燒着的大山扔在海中，海的1/3變成血，海中的活物死了1/3，船隻也壞了1/3。第三位天使吹號，就有燒着的大星，好像火把從天上落下來，落在江河的1/3和眾水的泉源上。這星名叫茵蔯，眾水的1/3變為茵蔯，因水變苦，就死了許多人。第四位天使吹號，日頭的1/3、月亮的1/3、星辰的1/3都被擊打，以致日月星的1/3黑暗了。白晝的1/3沒有光，黑夜也是這樣。